Thanks for jumping on with us, Joe. Um, just a bit of clarification for everybody. You have just got off your bike. You're not just posing in like amazing sponsored lycra there. We don't wear that all the time. You have literally just got in from a training ride. So thanks for making the time to jump on with us before you go charging into your next race block. So I thought we'll just have a chat really, and then get into some stuff. And we were just, we're just talking about the role your spotlights played, and just curious to explore your first race block, which was spent in the US, um, and maybe a great place to start is to ask you to think back to last year and your US experience last year. And I'm curious, would anything have been different if you could time travel back and ask yourself the question, what should my realistic expectations be before going into that first privateer US race block?
I think there's been an awful lot of learning in the last 12 months. It's pretty much 12 months to the day that I flew out to Vancouver for that first ever Northern American gravel race. And I don't know if I went out a little bit optimistically or what, but I think if I was to travel back today, I'd be like, just you have one job this next however many weeks of being out here is just learn. And you're not going to win anything, and you shouldn't be expecting to win anything. It should be very much performance orientated, but not result orientated. Like you're here to learn, you're here to get a good like lay of the land to come back in next year, i.e. 24, and actually try and get the results. And yeah, I can't really remember last year. I went out a little bit confidently, cockily, whatever, expecting something big. But yeah, I think in hindsight, all the things that went well and the things that went bad were very it was a very worthwhile trip for this year because more so from my mistakes, I kind of learned what to do this year.
Yeah, nice. So how did that change your approach? So, when you were boarding the plane this time, um, and you were definitely facing some different stuff, right? Like diverse races. There's crit stuff in there as well, which you didn't have last year. Loads of different locations, logistics, and of course now you're effectively the team manager for Ribble Rebellion. So you had like off-bike responsibilities as well. Like how did your experience last year prepare you for that broadened sort of set of responsibilities this year?
I think last year I did 3 locations in 3 weeks, and I was relatively there's a little bit of traveling throughout, but I was relatively on it. It was the first time I'd like suffered from jet lag and a few bits like that. So there was the odd lesson there, but it's I think this year has been so different. It's like I did 9 states in 6.5 weeks. I did every 3.5 days, I think I changed beds. So kind of a lot of my lessons, which I did learn last year, which was to kind of relax and don't do too much. I went in with the best intentions this year, but I still ended up being a little bit all over the shop. But last year, I think the biggest thing it taught me, mainly from Unbound, is when things are going wrong, just kind of run with it and don't get overwhelmed. Because after Unbound or during Unbound, I got quite angry for a few hours of the race why everything was going wrong, and I kind of realized you've got many hours at Unbound to realize that some things, when they're just out of your control, that's so be it. You kind of go with the flow and I suppose take a quick step back and realize why you're actually doing it. And that definitely did me some good on the in the US block this year when things weren't necessarily going to plan, whether that be on the bike in a race or off the bike trying to organize myself and effectively a full road team, which is a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, more variables. Like what I'm hearing you say is like from your experience at Unbound last time, there was a real example where it became important to focus not on the outcome. Like the results and outcomes there's external factors that you can't control, but it sounds like like what you were learning was that really important ability to just recenter around your performance and then letting an outcome take care of itself. Is that fair? Like a fair summary?
Yeah, exactly that. And I'm still kind of learning how to do that. For example, I went to a race called Belgian Waffle Ride in Utah at Cedar City. And we'd all spoken before. This was a couple of months ago. And we'd all spoken before saying the goal here is to see if I can race well at altitude. It's not to get a result. There's a big single track section in the middle, which I know I'm going to lose time at. And the goal here is to see how good I am at altitude to maybe dictate the 2025 calendar. And mid race, I was still sitting in the front group until we hit the single track. And then I got dropped, kind of to be expected. And I was a little bit frustrated as I was racing in because I was out in the front group. But I had to kind of recenter myself and be like, remember the goal here was to see if you could race at altitude. It wasn't to race necessarily for the win. So the main goal of that race in particular was to see what I'm capable of. I realized I could race at altitude, and then it's sometimes not sometimes it's always hard to disassociate yourself with the result sheet as an athlete because that's where you see your worth as.
Yeah,
So for certain races, having other goals apart from just whether you finish in the top 10 is quite important.
yeah. I'm hearing loads of hidden spotlight talk. Um, and I'm thinking about, your lead preferences if overplayed, you would really quickly set expectations on yourself that might be unrealistic. And so, if you did find yourself going well, then your expectations would start to escalate. That's what it would look like overplayed. And uh, the hidden spotlight talk I'm hearing is that you literally you just taught me through how you dialed that down. Like you just dialed your strengths down to keep them back in the sweet spot, which is really cool. Um,
And I'm
Tell me
just
about the dual responsibilities. I mean, you mentioned like the mindset of an athlete. Um, like, like how's that different from the role you're fulfilling as like Ribble team manager?
they're two they don't necessarily complement each other all the time, let's say. Um, my responsibilities as an athlete are my responsibilities to myself, and that is to be as good as an athlete as possible, which I know we just said it's not always about the result, but ultimately that is about the results. The performance is important, but it's the result you go for as an athlete. And rebellion is being manager of that team is again, it's all about the result, but it's not just me. It's well, there were six of us in the States, but nine of us in total in the team. And you can't just think about yourself. You've got to think about how your decisions will impact another five or six guys. And kind of, I can be quite harsh on myself and I'm quite direct to myself, but does that work to the other guys? How do they want to be treated? Like, there's so many things where I'm definitely not perfect at it. But yeah, it's been difficult navigating Joe the athlete and Joe the manager.
Yeah, and uh, and like what it's making me think about is your least preferences, like around Spotlight. Your empty chair. Um, to use that term would be very different, and questions that might come from your empty chair in that manager role would be like, what reassurance might others need from me? I mean, that might not be a question that would be natural to you when you're in full athlete mode, and so definitely that different role is going to require you to flex quite a long way out of your preferences. And I'm guessing at times it's really sapped your energy and possibly led to a bit of overwhelm. Um, that sort of managerial role.
Yeah, I think it's very fair to say that I was a bit burnt out after coming back from the US at the start of well, after the end of my first block this year. Um I mean, I did exactly what I said I wasn't going to do when we all sat down last year, and I kind of over raced myself in the first part anyway. Throw in a throw in a team manager job I didn't expect to be doing until late Feb. There's an awful lot of stuff going on, and I'm probably even now just out from Unbound this year, like suffering the consequences a little bit. It's like I got away with it for so long, and my race throughout the US is probably the best I've ever gone as an athlete, but um, there's only so long you can kid yourself or get away with it. And then eventually it's when I got back from the US, I ended up pulling out of track because I was so tired and it's just my body went, hey, hang about, mate. You need to have a rest. And
Yeah,
that was really enough one of our biggest performance indicators that's like going into the season when we spoke before was me resting more, wasn't it? And I think it's fair to say that's been my biggest weakness this year so far, not taking time off.
yeah. Which is kind of understandable because, well, tell us what happened in the US. Because in fact, um, whilst you might have sort of struggled with the stresses and strains of being an athlete, a team leader, uh, te team lead on the road, a team manager, and you've also got some other stuff going on in your life, right? Despite the competing demands, um, it went amazingly well, right? So, can like talk us through the highlights from your point of view?
I'm I think the whole block is a highlight. Like I'm gonna look back at this trip and definitely at the end of the season and use it as a reference as to how to do it well. And the preparation I did over winter was like perfect. But I think there's so many highlights. One of the biggest ones was after Mid South Gravel, which is the first race of the year, the first race they did over there. And I was like 11th or 12th in the end. And it's traditionally the season opener in the US, so all the big boys are there. And I was in the front group for until the last 10 or 11K when I got dropped after a suicide attack from myself. But that was very much the right, I'm here and I can do this. It was putting my kind of my flag in the ground and or my stake in the ground. And I think that led to me getting carried away a little bit. So I remember texting you guys, being like, right, what other races can I do? Like, let's race, race, race. I'm going, well. And that wasn't helped the week after when I went from Oklahoma to Texas. And I won in Texas, like relatively, I wouldn't say comfortably because the guy in second, Chris, was also, it was pretty tight between us two in the end. But behind us two, there was a massive gap. And I was like, right, going well, perfect. And then it was like another thing, oh, bit of success, let's keep going. And went up to altitude, did a nice training block. BWR was a bit of a blip from a results perspective, but it's still top 15 at a race, which I went to as like as a test almost. And then went to California in Redlands, which is the Redlands Bicycle Classic is a road race, probably the biggest US stage race. And I've been targeting it for a lot of winter. That was I wasn't overly public with it, but that was a big, big target of the start of the season, or of just of the season, full stop. And I mean, I was third on GC there, and it was one of those things. It's like, right, everything's still going well. Like I was getting tired and feeling like I was chasing my tail, but I was still racing well. So they're going to keep cracking on. And that's after that, we added in the extra race, which I was kind of warned against. I was like, what's going to go wrong here? Went to see Otter finish top 10 again. And it's just when everything's going well, it's easy to get carried away, isn't it? And it was only by the end of the block when I ended up doing a few races which don't necessarily suit me, the hour-long crits, where I started to feel tired and a little bit worn out. And I think in hindsight, I should have come back to Europe a week or two earlier before I burnt myself out because it was such a good block. And I mean, even Speed Week, there were some incredible team performances we put in.
Yeah,
But I think the longevity of my form, I think my form kind of buggered off at Speed Week and was like, all right, Joe, you've had a good block now. You should have rested a week and a half ago rather than kept trying to push it. And I'd say I think I'm paying for it slightly now still. But that's the fine line as an athlete. How much do you race versus how much do you rest versus travel and other obligations? It's a very fine balancing act, which you think you have nailed until you don't.
yeah. I mean, I get your point on Speed Week. However, the you know, I think we saw a different side of you, like your role as inspiring that team to perform. And there's some, if people want to check it out on social, some Joe's got some cool clips up of like real heat of the moment, adapting to, as sort of race tactics played out right in front of you. Amazing um, coordination, collaboration, communication between the team, moving like at pace in race. And so there was, you might have paid for it a little bit in the past few weeks, but it was I would say it was definitely worth it. It was it finished off that block really strongly for you as a developing, not just an athlete, but like as a leader. I loved it.
And that race around Spartanburg, like where we won the round of the USA Crits as a team, like a lot of the times when you say you win as a team on the road, it's not really a team effort. It's you have one guy who's the best, and he's like either one from a break or a sprint or whatever. But that ride is probably the most proud I've ever been to be in a team. Like every single person nailed it, and without every single person doing their job, we wouldn't have won. And say I was definitely tired at the end of my kind of even morale by that point, but I'll like never ever forget that Spartanburg ride. It was probably the best, without doubt, the best team performance I've been a part of, and it was just like an overwhelming feeling of pride. I think after that, that was
Yeah,
like
nice.
like after I won, winning Rattlesnake was relief. The podium at Redlands GC was I was just content, but then it was just like pride and excitement winning as a team in Spartanburg.
Yeah, success like that leaves clues, Joe. So, like, what did you learn from it that you can carry into the next block? When are you leaving, by the way?
Leaving tomorrow.
You're leaving tomorrow. So yeah,
Yeah,
cool. So success leaves clues. What did you learn from that success that you carrying into the next block?
I think I think personally I take a lot of success for me comes from confidence that the preparation's gone well.
Yeah,
Um, which is a little bit hard going into the next block because talking about preparation, I didn't prepare well enough, as in I didn't leave myself enough recovery between these two blocks. Um, but I think the two biggest things are not getting carried away, like in either in the heat of the moment when it's going bad or in the heat of the moment when it's going well.
yeah,
Not getting carried away thinking, oh, what else can I do? Which is I'm like a chronic overthinker, and we brought in the monkey just pedal kind of saying, which I do when I'm on the bike, which is basically stop thinking, recenter thoughts, and just focus on one thing, i.e., pedaling, because that's the only way you're gonna finish faster. And um, I think the other thing is what I learned from the success of the last block was success is like it's great, but it's also it doesn't happen by accident. And I do think I got a little bit lucky last time with I was playing with the devil with my recovery and my travel. So I think if anything, it taught me what not to do, as in to chill out a little bit more and not to get not carried away is the wrong word, but not to well, pretty much just travel less.
yeah.
Like doing
What I'm
nice
here,
things for 6 weeks is not the way of doing it necessarily.
yeah. Like, and what I'm hearing is that, like, and a load of people would relate to this. That we can put ourselves under too much pressure. Um, so, yeah, I mean, it's a great message, to just be a little bit more generous with ourselves, and not drive ourselves too hard. Probably keeps us right in the sweet spot where we get our best performance. Brilliant, Joe. Uh, Great to catch up. You're flying to the US tomorrow, so safe travels. Everybody can tell us what your socials are, because people might want to follow what's going on.
Well, I think I don't even know. I shouldn't. I
Joe,
am
Joe
Joe
doesn't know his
Laverick on
socials.
Instagram.
He just
Yeah, it's say for reference, it's Monday now, and say fly tomorrow, which is Tuesday, and then I have Unbound this weekend, and it's the forecast is due to be wet again, and but you've heard the stories, a lot of my last wet Unbound, so I'm crossing my fingers that it's not another 12 and a half hour day in the mud of Kansas, but I'm sure whatever happens, there'll be a story there.
I'm sure, yeah. Brilliant, Joe. We'll put a link to your socials, and like, we're going to catch up when you get back. So yeah, go well, and stay safe, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Good.